It looked like they're trying to replace Caitlin Clark with Paige Bueckers.
So, let's dive into the major story that has everyone talking. It appears that Forbes, in their latest 30 Under 30 list, has just delivered one of the most tone-deaf snubs imaginable to Caitlin Clark. Seriously, Forbes has just made what might go down as one of the most monumentally dumb decisions in the entire history of sports media. They've just released their annual 30 Under 30 list for athletes, a list that's supposed to signal who the future is. And somehow, Caitlin Clark's name is nowhere to be found. Instead of the biggest name in women's sports, they decided to put Paige Bueckers and Aaliyah Boston on there. As you can imagine, the backlash was not just immediate, it was absolutely brutal. Forbes is now staring down the barrel of a public relations nightmare that they, and only they, created for themselves. And honestly, watching the karma unfold in real time is a beautiful thing to witness. But before we get deep into this self-inflicted disaster, I really want you to tell me in the comments, how on earth does Forbes justify putting Paige Bueckers, who has yet to play a professional game, on this list, over Caitlin Clark? I genuinely want to hear someone try to defend this logic, because from where I'm sitting, I can't find a single rational reason for it. Well, it certainly isn't looking good for them, because Caitlin Clark has effectively been replaced by Paige Bueckers on a list that's supposed to represent impact. Forbes just walked, clear-eyed and on purpose, into the biggest landmine in women's basketball. Let's be clear about what the 30 Under 30 list is supposed to be. It's designed to highlight truly outstanding individuals under the age of 30 who are making significant, undeniable impacts in their respective fields. It's become this annual tradition that commands attention and supposedly carries some serious weight in recognizing the world's most influential figures. And yet, somehow, someway, the decision-makers at Forbes decided that Caitlin Clark, the single most impactful player in the history of women's basketball, didn't deserve a spot on that list this year. Let me just repeat that so the absolute insanity of it really sinks in. Caitlin Clark, the woman who single-handedly broke every attendance record you can think of, who brought millions of new fans to the WNBA, who completely dominated sports headlines for an entire year, and who fundamentally changed the financial landscape of women's sports. Somehow, she didn't make the cut. But you know who did? Paige Bueckers, who again hasn't played a single full professional season yet, and Aaliyah Boston, who is a very solid player, but let's be brutally honest here, she wouldn't be getting this kind of recognition if she wasn't Caitlin's teammate.
Caitlin Clark snags another honor. She's made the Forbes 30 Under 30 list. Clark, who is just 22 years old, is the only professional women's basketball player on this list. Forbes says Clark was chosen for leading the Indiana Fever to their first playoff appearance in 8 years, while breaking the WNBA single-season assist record and earning Rookie of the Year honors. But wait, there's more. She also led the WNBA All-Star Game voting with more than 700,000 ballots and has been credited with an increase in league viewership.
The moment the list dropped, the internet absolutely exploded. You could practically feel the collective disbelief from fans who couldn't believe what they were seeing, in a move that was both supportive and a little bit awkward. The Indiana Fever's official account posted a congratulatory message to Aaliyah Boston for making the list, which is genuinely great for her, but you can guess what happened next. The comments section was completely flooded with people asking the exact same, obvious questions. Where is Caitlin, and how does this make any sense at all? All the while, Forbes has been suspiciously and completely quiet about what their criteria for selection even was. So, let's break down precisely why this decision is so absurdly, indefensibly bad. Caitlin Clark was literally Time Magazine's Athlete of the Year. She was on the cover of major publications constantly. She was ranked as the most influential woman in sports by multiple outlets. She brought an unprecedented level of visibility to the WNBA. Television ratings didn't just go up, they skyrocketed whenever she played. Arenas sold out in every single city she visited. Merchandise with her name and number flew off the shelves faster than they could be stopped. Major sponsors literally lined up, checkbooks in hand, to attach their brands to her. For an entire year, she was the story of women's basketball. And Forbes looked at all of that mountain of evidence and essentially said, nah, we're good. Meanwhile, Paige Bueckers gets the nod, despite not having accomplished anything even remotely close to what Caitlin has in the professional ranks. Now, to be fair to Paige, she is an incredibly talented player. She is almost certainly going to be a star in the W. Her college career, when she's been healthy, has been impressive. She has a massive following and genuine, undeniable skill. But comparing her impact to Caitlin's at this very moment is just laughable. It's not even in the same universe. Paige has not played a single WNBA game yet. She hasn't proven she can dominate at the professional level. She has not moved the needle for the league's business in any measurable way. So what exactly is Forbes basing this decision on? The only explanation that makes a lick of sense is that Forbes is actively trying to manufacture the next big thing by anointing Paige as Caitlin's replacement before she's even stepped on a pro court. They are attempting to create a narrative where Paige is the new face of women's basketball before she has earned that title. And you know what? That's deeply insulting to both Paige and Caitlin. Paige doesn't need Forbes to artificially prop her up. She's talented enough to earn her own recognition on her own merit. And Caitlin Clark most certainly does not deserve to be pushed aside for someone who hasn't accomplished a tiny fraction of what she had. And then there's the case of Aaliyah Boston. She's a good, solid player. She's consistent. She's been to multiple All-Star games. She's a contributor on both ends of the floor. But let's be brutally honest with ourselves. She is only on this list for one reason. And that reason is because she plays next to Caitlin Clark. If Aaliyah was putting up the exact same statistics on the Dallas Wings or the Atlanta Dream, nobody would even be whispering her name for a Forbes list. Her visibility, her platform, it comes almost entirely from being Caitlin's teammate and benefiting from the massive wave of attention that Caitlin brings to the Indiana Fever. The Forbes article about Aaliyah's inclusion talks about how she elevated her game during the playoffs and provided a steady presence for the Fever. And that's all true and commendable. But it's also undeniably true that the Fever only made that playoff run because of Caitlin Clark. The entire offense ran through Caitlin. Every opposing defense designed their schemes exclusively to try and stop Caitlin. The media coverage was laser-focused on Caitlin. The ticket sales and the TV ratings were all driven by Caitlin. Aaliyah benefited tremendously from all of that attention and opportunity. And again, she capitalized on it well, but she is not on this list without Caitlin creating the platform for her to shine on. What makes this snub even more frustrating and frankly, bizarre, is that Forbes actually included Caitlin on last year's 30 under 30 list while she was still in college. So, they recognized her monumental impact back then, but now, after she's had an even bigger, more impactful year professionally, after she's proven that her collegiate success wasn't some kind of fluke, after she has legitimately changed the entire trajectory of the WNBA as a business, suddenly, she doesn't make the cut. The logic simply does not exist. Some people are desperately trying to defend Forbes by suggesting that maybe they don't want to include the same people multiple years in a row, that they want to highlight new names and give recognition to other players. And sure, on the surface, that could be a reasonable policy, except for the fact that Forbes has included the same athletes multiple times on these lists in other sports, so that entire explanation doesn't hold a drop of water either. This feels targeted. This feels like a deliberate, conscious decision to downplay Caitlin's impact. And the backlash has been as severe as it has been immediate. Fans are calling out Forbes on every single social media platform. Reputable sports analysts are publicly questioning the list's criteria and credibility. Even casual observers who don't really follow women's basketball are scratching their heads at this decision. Because here's the thing, even people who don't watch the WNBA know who Caitlin Clark is. Her cultural impact transcended her sport. She became a mainstream household name in a way that women's basketball players almost never do. And Forbes decided that none of that was worthy of recognition this year. And this is where the delicious karma comes into play. Forbes publishes these lists to generate attention and to establish themselves as cultural tastemakers. They want people talking about their selections, sharing their content, and debating their choices. Well, they got exactly what they wanted. People are absolutely talking about this list, but it's not in the way Forbes ever hoped for. Instead of celebrating the talented athletes who made the list, everyone is focused on the one glaring, inexplicable omission. Instead of Forbes looking smart and insightful, they look completely and utterly out of touch. The entire narrative has become about what they got wrong, not what they got right. The discussion surrounding Caitlyn's absence has generated far more conversation and engagement than the list itself ever would have. Entire articles are being written specifically about the snub. YouTube videos are being made breaking down just how ridiculous this decision is. Social media is just a flood of relentless criticism. Forbes wanted attention, and boy did they get it. But it's the kind of negative attention that makes them look incompetent. That, my friends, is karma. And it gets even better. Because by snubbing Caitlyn, Forbes has actually handed her and her legions of fans a powerful rallying cry. Now there's concrete, undeniable evidence of disrespect that can be pointed to. Now there's even more motivation for Caitlyn to go out and prove the doubters wrong, yet again. Now there's a clear narrative about mainstream publications refusing to properly recognize her impact. That's pure fuel. That's the kind of slight that elite competitors use to drive themselves to even greater heights. Forbes might have just given Caitlyn all the extra motivation she needs heading into next season. The Paige Bueckers inclusion is particularly telling about what Forbes is trying to accomplish here. Paige is a phenomenally talented player with huge potential, but she's also been injured frequently, which has significantly limited her college career. She hasn't dominated in the sustained way that Caitlyn dominated. She hasn't broken the same records or generated the same level of consistent excellence. But she has the right image. She fits a certain marketable mold. She's got the massive social media following. She's got the brand deals already lined up. And Forbes seems to be betting on that future potential rather than recognizing current, tangible accomplishment. That is a massive slap in the face to Caitlyn, who has actually done the work, who has actually proven herself at every single level, who has actually changed the game in real measurable ways. Caitlyn earned her recognition through raw performance and undeniable impact. Paige is getting recognition based on projection and marketing. Those are not the same thing, and a publication like Forbes should know better. The third player on the list, Nneka Ogwumike, is actually deserving of the recognition. She's been one of the most consistent and excellent players in the WNBA for years. She's a champion. She's made all-star teams and all WNBA teams. She contributes at an elite level on both ends of the court. Including her makes perfect sense, but even her deserved inclusion only serves to highlight how utterly absurd Caitlyn's absence is, because Nneka's impact, while significant, hasn't been anywhere close to what Caitlyn accomplished this past year alone. Some people have suggested that maybe Caitlyn's numbers weren't quite good enough statistically when compared to other candidates. And sure, she had some struggles adjusting to the professional game early in the season, but she still finished with incredibly impressive stats and improved dramatically as the year went on. More importantly, her impact went so far beyond individual statistics. She changed the financial landscape of the entire league. She brought in new sponsors. She increased the value of television contracts. She filled arenas to the rafters. She made women's basketball culturally relevant in a way it had never been before. If the Forbes 30 Under 30 list is truly about impact, then nobody in sports had more impact than Caitlyn Clark this year. Period. The timing of this snub is also deeply suspicious. It comes at a moment when there's been this growing discourse online about whether the Caitlyn Clark hype is dying down. Some content creators have noticed a decrease in engagement with Caitlyn-related content compared to the absolute peak of last season. Some are suggesting that the casual fans who showed up for the spectacle have now moved on. And Forbes releasing this list without Caitlyn feeds directly into that very narrative. It sends a message, intentionally or not, that her moment has passed and it's time to move on to the next shiny object. But here's the fundamental problem with that narrative. It's being pushed by people who want it to be true, not by any actual evidence. Yes, engagement has normalized from the absolute fever pitch of March Madness and her first few WNBA games. That's inevitable. You can't sustain that level of media hysteria forever. But Caitlyn is still, by a massive margin, the most popular player in women's basketball. She is still driving ratings and attendance. She is still the undisputed face of the sport. Pretending otherwise is just wishful thinking from people who, for whatever reason, never wanted her to succeed in the first place. Forbes, by jumping on this premature narrative, just makes themselves look foolish, because it's so clearly not true. Caitlyn's influence hasn't disappeared. It has simply evolved into something more sustainable. She is not a flash in the pan, she is the real deal. And Forbes is going to look even more ridiculous when she continues dominating next season, and they have to awkwardly try to explain why they left her off this year's list. So there you have it. Forbes made an indefensible decision, got absolutely destroyed for it in the court of public opinion, and in the process, gave Caitlin Clark even more motivation. That's what you call textbook karma. If you enjoyed watching this disaster unfold, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe for more honest sports coverage. Now I want to know what you think. Do you think Forbes will issue an apology, or will they just bury their heads in the sand and pretend this never happened? Drop your prediction down below.